pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this regularly scheduled meeting of Bowling Green City Council. We welcome all of our visitors this evening. It's particularly nice to see Superintendent Scrucci and School Board President Stewart with us this evening. Thank you. Okay, would you please begin by calling the roll?
Osbacher.
Here.
Harold.
Here.
Hollenbaugh.
Here.
Jeffers.
Here.
Robinette.
Here.
Roland.
Here.
Zanfordino.
Here.
The minutes of the meeting that was held on December 27th, 2018 were distributed to council prior to this meeting. Are there any additions or corrections to these minutes? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The motion passes. The minutes are approved as presented. Okay, is there correspondence this evening?
Yes. Distributed to you prior to the meeting was a listing of budget transfers to be made for the month of January, and those require your approval.
Is there a motion to approve the budget transfers?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The motion passes. The budget transfers are approved as presented.
Also distributed to you prior to the meeting is the financial budget summary report for the month of December 2018. And then also, this was distributed to you via email, and then also you have a copy in front of you, is a listing of appointments to city boards and commissions as requested by Mayor Edwards, and I'll read those into the record. New appointments, BG Housing Agency, Ron Newlove for a 3-year term, 5/31/21. Historic Preservation, Greg Hallamay for a 4-year term, and also Dr. John Sampin for a 3-year term, Raina Calderon for a 3-year term, and Les Barber for a 2-year term, Gail Nader for a 2-year term, and then to the Taxi Cab License Board, Lieutenant Dan Mancuso as the ex officio member. And those require your confirmation as well.
Thank you, Kay. Is there a motion to approve the board and commission appointments?
So moved.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The motion passes. The committee and board appointments are approved. As always, we are very thankful for those people in our community that are willing to serve on our various boards and commissions. I think all of us are very excited to officially appoint members to the Historic Preservation Commission, and will eagerly await their organization and their initial meeting. Thanks, Kay. Any other correspondence?
That's all I have.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, do we have special recognitions this
We
evening?
do not, but as planned, but there are two very distinguished people with us tonight here. They're working on their merit badges for citizenship. And I know that Drew Erickson is here. And your name, please?
Cameron Fallis.
Cameron?
Cameron Fallis.
Cameron Fallis. Okay, nice to have you both here with Mr. Erickson. So we appreciate it very much.
Thank you, Mayor. Welcome, gentlemen, and good luck on your projects. Okay, do we have anyone who has registered for lobby visitation this evening?
Yes, Nathan Eberly.
Mr. Eberly, you know the drill.
Nathan Eberly, 907 Sandridge here in BG. Just coming before council because I wanted to commend city workers this past weekend. It was amazing. We finally got a winter storm. It's finally winter in BG. But I say, the city workers did a great job, especially in front of my house on Sand Ridge. It seemed to be well done throughout the duration of the storm. And I just wanted to come forward to council and say, I hope that can be extended out to the city workers that worked really hard this past weekend, especially on a holiday weekend, as hard as they worked. Definitely deserve the recognition. Thank you.
Very good. Thank
Second.
you. The remarks are right on mark, Nathan. Thank you very much. And certainly we do appreciate the efforts of all of our city personnel.
That's all we have.
Thank you. Let's move To the introduction of legislation, please.
Mr. President,
Mr. Jeffers.
from the Finance Ways and Means Committee, I have an ordinance providing supplemental appropriations for the current expenses and other expenditures of the City of Bowling Green, Ohio during the fiscal year beginning January 1, 2019 and ending December 31, 2019. Ordinance authorizing an agreement between the City of Bowling Green, Ohio and the Wood County Regional Airport Authority. Ordinance authorizing the municipal administrator and the utilities director to advertise for bids and enter into a contract or contracts and/or participate in state of Ohio or federal purchasing programs for the purchase of vehicles, equipment, and completion of projects, as well as the trade-in or outright sale of vehicles and equipment no longer needed for municipal purposes. Ordinance authorizing the municipal administrator and the utilities director to enter into a contract or contracts with specified vendors for work that may exceed $50,000 annually for calendar year 2019. Ordinance authorizing the municipal administrator to advertise for bids and enter into a contract or contracts for sidewalk improvements, pavement striping, de-icing salt, and improving streets, alleys, and other public ways in the City of Bowling Green, Ohio.
Thank you, Mr. Jeffers. I have two ordinances from the Public Utilities Committee. An ordinance authorizing the Utilities Director to execute an agreement with CorPro for the installation and repair of cathodic protection systems. And also an ordinance authorizing the Utilities Director to advertise for bids and enter into a contract or contracts for the installation of electric and communication conduits at the I-75 and East Worcester Street roundabout project.
Mr. President,
Mr. Hollenbaugh.
I have a resolution authorizing the mayor of the City of Bowling Green, Ohio, to file an application and execute a contract upon grant application approval under the Community Development Block Grant Entitlement Program as authorized by the Housing and Community Development Act of 1974 as amended.
Thank you, Mark. Official reports. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Mr. President and members of council and all assembled, and our two scouts here tonight. It's great to have you with us, and good luck with your merit badge there in citizenship. Nathan, thank you for your comments. We've heard many comments like similar to yours from citizens throughout the community about the good work of our Public Works Division, Brian Kraft. And of course, he was working around the clock with Chief Hetrick and also Joe Fawcett. And I was getting reports around the clock. I didn't have to go out, but they were out there. And I was really, really pleased with what they did, those 12-hour shifts, and they did a terrific job. And also, I was reminded today by Chief Mormon that while he wasn't out plowing, he was in his whole division there were extra busy because, unfortunately, sadly, people were falling and getting into accidents because of the snow and the ice and the winds and so forth there. So I sensed things were extra busy, and the students weren't even here. So to contribute to that busyness. But in any event, they'll be back this next weekend. So also, I just want to thank you very much for your approval tonight of the various appointments, and especially I'm going to single out the Historic Preservation Commission. You took this action back in the fall, and it was finally became law early in December, about midway through December, when it finished its period there that before it became officially law. So we moved ahead with these appointments. You had input into that process, which I'm very grateful. This book here that I have at my fingertips represents a lot of good work by the Historic Preservation Task Force that we appointed back a few years ago. And they did a fantastic job. And it's a very, very complete report. very thorough all the way through. And so that would be one of the first things that we will be sharing with the members of the Historic Preservation Commission. Heather will be the point person on that, the conduit with the commission, and I expect to be very, very much engaged in that process as well. And I know that they'll be reaching out to you because we know that we have a lot invested in this overall process here because it's inextricably linked with our neighborhood revitalization effort, the CAP program, and so I'm very optimistic that about the work of the commission. I'm eager for them to get started. I think we'll try to set up their first meeting for them in maybe the first week in February, and to get that process underway. And but each person that I asked to serve on the commission on your behalf, on behalf of the city, responded with a great deal of enthusiasm. I'm particularly pleased with Greg Hallamay because he's a property owner in our historic downtown area. He's got like all these individuals do, they have a lot on their plate, very busy, but they recognize the import of historic preservation and what it can mean for our community, and particularly for maybe some targeted areas within our community as a whole. So I'm very grateful for their service. I'm also pleased, Mr. President, because you've identified our superintendent and the president of our school board being with us this evening. And Francis, of course, has been a regular attendee at these meetings. And I know that the school system, our Bowling Green City school system, is very much on all of your minds. You've talked about it. Greg Robinette has shared rather strong feelings in a passionate way. We don't have any solutions. We don't have any recommendations. But all of us, I know, have been quite concerned about the city schools and the levies, both for on the capital side, and then, of course, we have these now levies coming up on the operating side. And at least two of you heard me today at speaking to the Exchange Club, and I ended on that note. Bill and Sandy, when you were there, and Nathan, about the importance of our schools and what it means to our city as a whole. If we are to continue to grow and prosper as a city, we also need to grow and develop and strengthen our school system as well. What that entails, what it might mean, we all know that from a city standpoint, we're very limited in what we can do. But each one of our tax abatement agreements has written, the city schools have been written into each and every one of them, and they're benefiting enormously from it. I hate to think what it would be like without the growth we've had in the industrial sector, not only for the schools, but for our community as a whole. And I'm very, very grateful, as I know you all are, to the continuing good work of Sue Clark and the Community Development Foundation, namely our independent economic development arm for the city of Bowling Green. So with that, concludes my report. But if you have any questions for me, I'd be more than happy to try to answer them.
Other questions for Mayor Edwards?
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We have our Assistant Municipal Administrator, Mr. Fawcett, this evening.
Good evening. Thought I'd give you a quick brief over this weekend's snow event. We've been tracking the storm system, obviously, since the news started reporting it, but Tony Hetrick and Brian Kraft and I met earlier in the week, last week, to kind of come up with a game plan for if things unfolded the way they did, what would our response be? And I think that those plans largely aided in our success in getting through the snow event this past weekend. We decided early on Saturday to issue the declaration around 9 a.m., which was a little bit before the 2 inches, which is normally triggers the snow emergency. However, with the continuing snowfall and the forecast of plenty more snow coming, we decided to take a proactive stance with that snow emergency declaration. I think that proved wise. Technically, declaring it at 9 gave people until 11 to get their cars off of snow streets. But with the focus of the plows on the major routes, Main Street and Wooster and the outer belt around the city, we gave them until 3 so that we could get the snow streets cleared in time for darkness, when the plows would then be moving in a more focused manner in the interior of the city. Ultimately, the police division had to tow 6 vehicles and issue 20 parking tickets to people who had their cars remaining on snow streets. Brian shared with me some historical information from the winter of 2013-14, and compared to that year, that 6 is pretty good. So I think the residents did a very good job of reacting to when that snow emergency was declared. And you can't say enough about the snowplow crews and the police division for getting out there really all day, Saturday, Sunday, and most of Monday. During my time of driving around the city this weekend, I saw a number of vehicles in snowbanks or otherwise immobile. And I think Tony said 19 assists for immobile vehicles. Again, that's a credit to our police division to stop and help people. And the fact that people know that when they see a police officer out, they come to their aid. So pending your questions, that is my report for this evening.
Questions for Mr. Fawcett?
Joe, is there any coordination with the county on declaring a snow emergency? I imagine the issues are somewhat different with rural roads versus city.
Yeah. No, there is not. The two, while it's a like term, are completely different. The snow emergency within the city, simply implements parking restrictions. We do that for a few different reasons. One is clearly safety, but the other is to aid with the plowing of the streets to ensure that the entire street is clear. But no, there's no coordination. They focus on the county roads and outside of the city, or focus on the inside of the city.
Very good.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Planning Director, Ms. Saylor, is not with us this evening. Parks and Recreation Director, Ms. Otley.
Good evening. It might be evident at this point, but I do want to remind you that the park board meeting has been moved from tonight at 7 to next Tuesday at 7. And they, all of the meetings this year will be at the Simpson Building. So a little easier to remember. We did our tour of the parks last year. Just a couple things that are coming up that I want to make you aware of. Our 13th annual Brown Bag Music Series, which is a fantastic partnership with BGSU, with the College of Musical Arts, does kick off this Friday, January 25th. And those are at the Simpson Building, 11:45 to 1. The actual performance is at 12:15, I believe. Bring your lunch, drinks, and desserts are available for a small donation. We always keep it warm, and a great mixture of entertainment, again, from the university. This first one is a celebration of the voice, which I don't have right now. And then a couple other things coming up. I will not be at the next council meeting because I will be at our Ohio Parks and Recreation Association State Conference. So I do want to make you aware that Winterfest, I believe Wendy Chambers will be here at the next meeting. But the Parks and Rec event that is going on with that, the 1 Mile Frostbite Fun Run, is occurring again. Hopefully, again, our goal is to not actually give anyone frostbite. So I'm glad it wasn't this past weekend. But registration is now open for that. So that is 1 mile around City Park. So make sure to get your registrations in. You can walk as well. But it's a great opportunity, especially for families, to be able to do that together. And good for New Year's resolution folks as well. And then Friday, February 15th, we have our annual Daddy-Daughter Dance out at the Community Center. So just a couple updates on things that are going on. And that is all that I have, unless you have questions for me.
Questions for Kristen? Very good. Thank you.
Thanks.
City Attorney, Mr. Marsh. Questions for Mr. Marsh? Thank you. Utilities Director, Mr. O'Connell. Questions for Mr. O'Connell? Thank you. Public Works Director, Mr. Kraft.
Well, I really wasn't going to intend on saying anything, but I want to at least give Nathan thanks for the shout out to Public Works and the mayor and all that. And the help we got from police was huge this weekend. One thing we always kind of forget is thanking our citizens for the cooperation they gave us, for the parking compliance they gave us, and then our use of their tax dollars for the equipment that we have, the staff we have. Some of those trucks are 25 years old and they're still on the road. That's a testament to our guys keeping them in shape and fine running. And some of the equipment we do have, when the wind starts picking up, we got 2 loaders to go push it back. We now have 2 tandem axle trucks that can each pull on a brine tanks of 1,800 gallons each. We partner with ODOT to, when it got 4 degrees on Sunday, the brine wasn't going to work anymore. We went and got some calcium chloride. So those kind of things that have kind of happened over the years really put us in a good position to battle some of these storms that in years past you kind of really maybe struggled with. So I want to thank mostly our citizens for helping us out both in the compliance with the parking and giving us the funds to have the equipment to make our job quicker and easier and pay back to them in our service. So that's on my report. Unless you have any questions of me.
Questions for Mr. Kraft? Thank you. Great point, Brian.
Thanks.
We appreciate it. It concludes our official reports. Let's move on to council committee reports. I'd like to begin council committee reports by, I guess, remarking on the council administration strategic planning meeting that happened earlier this month. It was, I thought, a really good discussion. I certainly appreciate the participation of our staff, give up their time on a Saturday morning. Allowed us an opportunity to look back on council goals that were identified in 2018 and also talk about council goals moving forward in 2019. It was a very good, comprehensive discussion. I thought that there were a number of very interesting and challenging topics that were discussed. All of them are relevant. And will deserve follow-up discussion and perhaps implementation. In keeping with past practice, as I stated that day, it was going to be my goal to try to communicate with council members and come up with a consensus of maybe 3 or 4 goals that we could then forward to the administration for focus on in 2019. Excuse me. Thanks to the input from council members, we've done that. We're still maybe working on the actual language of some of these, but I did want to share those this evening. So the 4 council goals that we've identified for 2019, and these are in no particular order, will be a continued focus on neighborhood revitalization efforts and implementation of CAP-related initiatives. It was noted that these discussions will be multifaceted and will also include continued discussion on sidewalk improvements, consideration of possible exterior housing maintenance code, and discussion of potential rental registration processes, and also support of the new Historic Preservation Commission, among others. Second goal is to identify economic development opportunities and specifically development opportunities in the East Worcester Street corridor. Third goal is to develop a BG Council statement of support of Bowling Green City Schools and discuss the importance of the schools in our community. And finally, we would like to discuss opportunities to improve what was called the BG citizen experience. We're just eager to work with our administration and just determine if there are ways that we can improve our city government's communication with our residents. So those will be the 4 goals that we will, that I will forward to the administration officially just in the next couple of days. But I did want to share those publicly this evening and thank council members for all of your work in developing those goals.
Mike, I'd comment that in my opinion, you pretty fairly well encapsulated what we discussed that day, and I think that will be helpful to Joe and Lori as they think about how they can implement these things. They have a variety of deep understandings on how these processes can be established, and so we will be depending on their expertise and department heads to figure out a lot of these things. But I like having this list here, and I think it'll be something to refer to from time to time, and I look forward to a lot of progress on these things.
Thank you.
Mr.
President, I especially am happy that you announced this publicly tonight. I think it's good for our residents to be aware of what we are focusing on and doing the announcement, talking about the meeting, announcing what we have set as our priorities. I think it's one step towards making the people happy in our part of the community.
Thanks, Sandy. I agree with that. I do want to stress again that this is just this is a rather narrow list. We discussed a broad number of topics that day, and many of them I'm certain will be a point of discussion as we move, through 2019 and beyond. Quite honestly, because one thing that was noticeable to me when we met earlier this month was that goals that were identified in 2018, there's carryover into 2019. So I think that points out that a number of the things that we're focused on right now in our community are really long-range, multifaceted, complicated things that are going to take a little bit of time, patience, and certainly resources to implement. So I think it's good that we have had this meeting annually. It allows us to keep track of those things that we've identified previously, chart our progress on those goals, and then also discuss new emphasis for the coming year. So I think it's a very valuable process.
Hey, Mr. President,
Yes.
I just wanted to commend you not only for having the meeting, but herding us cats to the point where we were able to come up with a list. The email stream where you gave out the first list and then we gave our continued feedback, and it's coalesced really well. And I want to commend you on that, and the rest of council for putting the effort in. Years ago when I was a statistician, the senior statistician had a little cartoon that he had outside his door, and it was the stereotypical boardroom with people around the table, and under the caption under it said, having lost sight of their objectives, they redoubled their efforts. And what we can say here is we have some focus, and we know where we can make the best impact, and planning it shows. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Bill.
Yeah, Mr. President, I think this list is very good and captures the intent of our group. But I do want to say also that while these can and should be our priorities, I think we need to all accept the fact that we got a lot of work ahead of us when it comes to the promise of the document that the East Wooster Street Corridor Project is going to give us. Because if they deliver what they promised, they're going to create a lot of work for us in going through that and determine which of the implementation recommendations we're going to push forward on, merging those with the existing implementation goals of the CAP, which overlap geographically, and coming up with a way that makes sense to move forward. I'm looking forward to the process, but it's going to be there's going to be a lot of elbow grease involved, and I'm hoping we're ready to go forward. And I also think too that while these are great priorities, it doesn't mean that we can't and shouldn't be moving forward on other areas that we've all expressed interest in through our various committees, and take advantage of opportunities to continue to move the city forward in other areas as well, even with these being the priority issues to focus. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg.
Mr. President, just wanted to say thanks also for your dealing with our multiple emails. Mr. President sent out a draft that we all had feedback on, and the list has incorporated many of our comments. I also want to thank Greg for bringing up things that the list is not our complete task in the coming year. And to roll into my next topic, I've wanted to request a public hearing before our next council meeting on February 4th at 6 p.m. To further our discussion of bicycle developments in town. In February, we had a joint meeting with our Transportation and Safety Committee and the Bicycle Safety Commission. And after that meeting, that group drew up a really nice document on long-range hopes that they hope the city can work towards. And at our next meeting on February 4th, we'd like to look at that document and proceed with that discussion.
Very
Don,
good.
do you intend that to be a joint, again, another joint meeting between the commission and council, or is it just
No.
review of the document?
No, it's going to be another joint meeting. Sorry, Greg. Yes, I had contacted you and Mark about possible dates, and the date finally crystallized. I learned yesterday the final date. But the Bicycle Safety Commission met last week, and they knew that we were available on both the 4th and the 19th, and the 4th is what worked out for the commission members.
I just want to clarify the format. So it will be another joint.
Yes, another joint,
meeting
yes,
between the
of
Bicycle
our
Safety Commission
committee and the
Okay,
commission.
Great. Oh, that's super. I look forward to it.
So not really a public hearing, it's more of a
Right, I just
joint
wanted to
meeting.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, a
That's
joint,
okay.
yeah, a joint meeting. Yes.
Okay.
Sorry about my choice of words. Yeah.
All right.
The calendar will accommodate that meeting?
Yes.
Okay? Very good.
Yes, I checked. Okay.
Great. Thank you, John.
I also have, there will be a meeting of the Community Improvement Committee after consultation with administration and committee members, and a request for some information that should be available by that time. We would like to convene a meeting of the Community Improvement Committee February 19th at 6 o'clock, if that date hasn't closed in the last 35 minutes.
It is not.
Okay. For the purpose of discussing plastic grocery bags.
Very good. Thank you, Mark. Additional committee reports this evening.
Yeah, Mr. President,
Jeffers.
we have been dealing with parking downtown, and it's officially part of the Finance Committee's purview, but we've pretty much handled it as committee of the whole, so I'd like to bring this back up for discussion. As you know, we tabled an ordinance that would have raised the cost to park in the lots from 25 cents an hour to 50 cents an hour. And then some council members thought we ought to consider some other possible rearrangements of parking. And so I'm going to try to summarize what the committee came up with. And Joe, you're as well aware of any of this, and probably more so than I am, so feel free to jump in at any time. You could not possibly offend me by changing anything I say. I'm going to kind of go backwards. I think the bottom line is we're probably going to want to, say this committee is wanting us to keep the current plan overall. And so we look at the issue in two ways. We have to find the money to maintain the parking lots, and then we have to find the money to enforce time limitations. Nobody on any part of this committee was interested in free parking, meaning that you could just park whenever, wherever, for as how long as you wanted. That's untenable. And so then it suddenly became still complicated. And so as we thought about the idea of shared cost parking, what some people call free parking, even though it has some attraction, it just has some difficulties. Some of the downtown business owners, and you want to sort of contrast business owners with property owners, some of the downtown business owners were very anxious to see us find a shared cost solution. They were expressed their willingness to pay a certain portion of the cost for to do away with the charges for parking. So there was definitely some interest in that. And I would tell you that the property owners were also very interested in this model. They were not opposed to footing the bill up front and then trying to recoup those costs through the business property renters. So there was a lot of interest and a lot of discussion of how shared cost would work. But there was not an overwhelming consensus of the committee that was the way to go. And as one committee member said, if any particular change model is going to work, it probably would have already been done. This is not the first group to think about parking. It comes up, time and again. So I think I want one more comment on, so we split the cost of maintaining the lots compared to the cost of enforcing the time limits. And a couple people were really nervous about the idea of putting up a sign that says free parking and then trying to educate people about what the rules are, the time limits, but then deriving all of the income for the enforcement through fines. So it's almost like we would be pretending that we wanted people to obey the rules, because we're going to need that fine money if that's going to be our whole model for funding the enforcement. So we that was one real concern, and a number of other concerns in the enforcement aspect. And Joe, it would probably be appropriate if you said, kind of like speed it up there, Jeff, or something like that. Thanks. I needed that. So yeah, I said I was going to give the bottom line first, and then I dove into all that. Sorry about that. But so basically, we're saying we want to change the hourly rate from 25 cents to 50 cents. We want to change the time limit from 2 to 3 hours in the lots. We want to provide free handicap spaces in the premier spots in the lots. And then that brings us up to the kiosks. And kiosks are not popular with everybody. They are, in my view, very, very good tools. They're not perfect. I had a fear of kiosks at the beginning of our current kiosk use, and so I understand that. And so we're looking at much better kiosks. They still have the same word, and so it's probably going to be difficult for some people. It is a little tricky to learn, and we respect that, and we want to try to deal with that and help people. But it just seems like kiosks are the best way to go, and we'll learn more about that as time goes on.
Maybe if we called the kiosks roundabouts, people would like them better.
And then one last comment, and Chief Patrick probably doesn't care to get into it at the moment, but he looked into a variety of different enforcement procedures and technologies, and I won't try to describe them, but basically the trouble with almost all of them is that they're expensive, at least initially, and so to know if they're going to pan out in the long run is a little hard to say. So a lot of items were considered. It was a really dedicated and decent committee, and people were very open to all the ideas that were discussed, but that's pretty much what we came up with. So I'd be happy to hear other comments. We did come up with a revised legislation on that we can go forward with the things that I outlined here.
Mr. President?
Mr. Harold.
Just to follow up, Bruce, because we would be under this scenario increasing the per hour charge for those that pay the meters or pay the kiosks, have you entertained the possibility of piggybacking this with increasing fines? Because then what happens is, of course, I guess it's basic economics, as the cost of compliance goes up, the temptation for non-compliance may go up, and to kind of offset that and not just penalize is too strong a word, but not to penalize the ones that feed the meter without some sort of an adjustment to penalize those that try and get around it. And honestly, our parking fees are really low if you overstay your meter. I look at it more as a contribution than a fine. It's so low. So is there some discussion, or will that be part of, I would encourage it to be part of this whole package, to take a look at bumping up the fines, not appreciably, but at least to some extent?
there was some discussion on that. I don't have my notes on that with me, and so I'm kind of going to babble a minute and see if Joe maybe wants to take that one. But I do want to point out that we feel that switching from 25 cents to 50 cents is very reasonable. It's much more expensive in a lot of other cities. Also, by keeping sort of the same structure in place, if it's determined at some point that the certain fines for certain situations are not adequate, those can be adjusted, and we don't have to try to change the entire system.
Well, I'm thinking more in terms of, and I like your words about keeping the structure relatively the same. The fine structure would be relatively the same. It's just you'd bump it up from, I don't know, like $5 for overstaying your meter to something higher. And then also the overstaying, we're increasing the number of hours from 2 to 3, according to what you're saying. So there's an argument that could be made that we're giving you 50% more time in that spot, will increase the fine because you're going above and beyond our very generous allocation of time in that same spot. So we're not talking about anything that's punitive. We're talking about something that just keeps in line with these other adjustments. And I just would like to see that as part of the entire package. You've mentioned for example, the handicap being free, which wasn't an original part, so that's added to this suite of changes, and just add the fines in there as well. That way it's all in one set package. And then we can pass it with the understanding that we'll review in a year and see if the increased fine results in a decrease in people going downtown. I love the idea of resetting the kiosks to something that is like a next generation that will take care of some of the problems with the first generation, if you will, of kiosks. And so we're making an incremental movement and then reassessing after a year. I think that would be prudent, and I want to commend you and the committee. It would have been easy to just simply pass it, but we took the extra step, the extra effort to have a really good committee put together to study it. So we've done our due diligence, and I just would like to see the whole package put together so that we can vote on it.
Well, Mr. President, I'd like to say I think there's probably some merit in at some point in time reviewing the fines. The fines aren't on the table. The ordinance on the table does not address fines. The ordinance on the table, which I think we ought to consider tonight, deals with the issues as were first introduced to us on August 6th, 2018 at the first reading. And while I agree with your, forcing ourselves to review this after a year and so forth makes great sense, I also think we ought to take the step to make a decision on the ordinance that's before us. And I have no problem with investigating and considering our fines, but that's not the fines are not addressed in this section of the ordinance, nor in the ordinance on the table. So, Mr. President, I would like to move this forward. Therefore, I move that we remove this ordinance 8704, from the table.
Greg, we can get to that when we get to the reading of legislation. I agree with you, quite honestly. I'm interested in moving forward the amended piece of legislation that we have in front of us this evening. With all due respect, Bill, I do agree that we should take a look at the structure of parking fines. And I believe that that's something that Joe and the administration has talked about. Not really prepared, I don't believe right now, to make a recommendation on that. So I agree with Greg. I'm interested in moving this piece of legislation off the table and moving forward with it this evening in order to, quite frankly, begin to fill the hole in our budget that is being created in parking. It's very important that we start to collect the funds necessary to repave those lots. And everyday passes is a lost opportunity to collect revenue towards that expense that's coming very soon. So, again, I'm interested in moving this forward this evening.
Mr. President, I have a question that may be pertinent now. What is it going to cost us to change the allow 3 hours and charge? Does anyone have that figure? Oh, I'm sorry. If you're not prepared, it's okay.
The kiosks are easy. Is that what you're asking for? What it'll cost to change the kiosks?
Even the meters that we feed and the other lots.
Well, the meter fee change is done by hand with the old turnstile meters or the digital meters.
So that's no resetting.
So the parking technicians are going to have to do that by hand. So I think that cost would be rolled up in their salary. But certainly we can provide you more information as far as what the IPS kiosks themselves would cost.
So we don't have to change out any meters. We just have to change the number of hours you're allowed to put in the meter.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Mr. President, I also want to move things along. I don't want to hold things up. But I would like to say that I personally want to revisit this. I think our parking still faces serious problems. We have our premier parking free of charge to anybody. Handicap parking is not able to be done on Main Street safely. We know that. So it's not really the best situation that we put them so far away, shopping, building, restaurants. We have an aging population here that doesn't go downtown shopping. I'm learning more and more all the time because they just can't walk far enough, especially in winter weather, to get in stores to do shopping. We are a college town, and every year we're going to have new students, and every year we have to retrain them. You just nilly-willy can't go downtown and park your car overnight or let your friend park the car overnight while you go to a bar and then go home with the rest of the weekend and think you can safely park downtown without being ticketed. I would like, I will support this when the time comes because we do need the money, and 50 cents is not going to do a lot of harm. But I do want to visit this. We still have business owners downtown that are not quite happy with this. Of the 4 business owners that were on the committee, they wanted it. It was some of the other people who said, well, we don't like the idea of using fine money from over parking to patrol people from over parking. It's a big catch-22, but that's what we're doing now, too. I mean, we are doing it. That's why we fine people for over parking, even for the 2 hours. But I hope as a council, we won't think we've done our job and put it to rest and move on and kick the can down the street a little bit farther. I hope we will revisit this at some time and always try to make our downtown better for the shopkeepers, for the building owners, and for our residents, and being inviting to out-of-town residents, many of who have free parking in the downtown where they prefer to shop. So that's all I want to say.
Thank you, Sandy.
President?
Mr. Harold.
I was, of course, aware that the parking fines were not a part of this legislation, but in making the legislation more comprehensive, it seemed to be prudent to include it. As you probably know, I err on the side of giving citizens a chance for input, and our next council meeting is February 4th, which isn't really that long from now. So I would encourage council to not take it off the table tonight, but to announce that we plan on taking it off the table with the changes that Bruce had mentioned next council meeting, to allow the public to re-engage in what we had tabled a while ago, and if they feel so inclined, to either contact us individually or come to the next council meeting. The cost is we're waiting until the 4th of February. The benefit is we're giving the citizens another chance to engage and let their feelings be known. And I think personally, I think it's worth the added time to announce it tonight, and that we're planning on bringing it off and voting on it next meeting, and give people a chance to discuss it. It's kind of the way to sort of compensate for having given it its 3 readings a while back, making some adjustments, but bringing it off the table. We want to be able to have the advantage of having had the 3 readings, but also give opportunity to citizens to speak.
Thank you.
And Mr. President, just as a point of clarification, so the kiosks will be replaced then?
Correct.
The kiosk, yes. And the benefit of the new kiosk is, can that be summarized quickly?
Well, they are somewhat easier to use, and for people who are interested in paying by credit card, they're much more advantageous for that. And just a easier system to use when you walk up to the kiosk. You don't have to get the sequence exactly right. It's very forgiving and just generally easier to use.
Great. Thanks, Bruce.
I can tell you that the whole focus when looking at new kiosk systems will be find a system that is more user-friendly. We've heard repeatedly from our residents that was, the main hang-up that they had with the kiosks. They just didn't feel that they were very user-friendly. We did have a vendor gave a demonstration of a new kiosk system that I thought was more user-friendly. There are a couple of options where you could go online to the provider of the technology and either preload a credit card or download an app for your smartphone. And we're also discussing ways that we can make something like a preloaded card available for purchase, like at the Four Corners Center. So if somebody doesn't want to go online and utilize those services, they can go in and buy a card and put $25 on the card, and it will serve basically as the same way as a credit card. So that's going to be the main focus, for sure.
Thank you.
Any other council committee reports this evening? Very good. Thank you for that discussion. Okay, let's move on with the reading of legislation.
Legislation for first reading. Resolution number 3726 for first reading. Resolution authorizing the mayor of the city of Bowling Green, Ohio, to file an application and execute a contract upon grant application approval under the Community Development Block Grant Entitlement Program as authorized by the Housing and Community Development Act of 1974 as amended. Ordinance number 8741 for first reading. Ordinance providing supplemental appropriations for the current expenses and other expenditures of the city of Bowling Green, Ohio during the fiscal year beginning January 1, 2019 and ending December 31, 2019.
I move to suspend the rules and give ordinance 8741 its second and third readings.
Second.
Kay, would you please call the roll?
Harold?
Yes.
Hollenbaugh?
Yes.
Jeffers?
Yes.
Robinette?
Yes.
Roland?
Yes.
Zanfordino?
Yes.
Osbacher?
Yes. The motion passes. The rules are suspended for ordinance 8741.
Ordinance number 8741 for second and third reading. Ordinance providing supplemental appropriations for the current expenses and other expenditures of the city of Bowling Green, Ohio during the fiscal year beginning January 1, 2019 and ending December 31, 2019.
Mr. President,
Mr. Jeffers?
I move that we adopt ordinance 8741.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Kay, would you please call the roll?
Hollenbaugh?
Yes.
Jeffers?
Yes.
Robinette?
Yes.
Roland?
Yes.
Zanfordino?
Yes.
Osbacher?
Yes.
Harold?
Yes.
The motion passes. Ordinance 8741 is adopted.
Ordinance number 8742 for first reading. Ordinance authorizing an agreement between the City of Bowling Green, Ohio and the Wood County Regional Airport Authority. Ordinance number 8743 for first reading. Ordinance authorizing the municipal administrator and the utilities director to advertise for bids and enter into a contract or contracts and/or participate in state of Ohio or federal purchasing programs for the purchase of vehicles, equipment, and completion of projects, as well as the trade-in or outright sale of vehicles and equipment no longer needed for municipal purposes. Ordinance number 8744 for first reading. Ordinance authorizing the municipal administrator and the utilities director to enter into a contract or contracts with specified vendors for work that may exceed $50,000 annually for calendar year 2019. Ordinance number 8745 for first reading. Ordinance authorizing the municipal administrator to advertise for bids and enter into a contract or contracts for sidewalk improvements, pavement striping, de-icing salt, and improving streets, alleys, and other public ways in the city of Bowling Green, Ohio. Ordinance number 8746 for first reading. Ordinance authorizing the Utilities Director to execute an agreement with CorePro for the installation and repair of the cathodic protection systems. Ordinance number 8747 for first reading. Ordinance authorizing the Utilities Director to advertise for bids and enter into a contract or contracts for the installation of electric and communication conduits at the I-75 and East Wooster Street roundabout project.
Mr. President,
Mr. Jeffers.
I move that we take ordinance 8704 off the table.
Second.
It's moved and seconded. Kay, would you please call the roll?
Jeffers?
Yes.
Robinette?
Yes.
Roland?
Yes.
Zanfordino?
Yes.
Osbacher?
Yes.
Harold?
No.
Hollenbaugh?
Yes.
The motion passes. Ordinance 8704 is removed from the table.
Mr. President,
Mr. Jeffers.
I move that we adopt by substitution an amended ordinance 8704.
Excuse me,
We need
Chris,
to-
I think we
yeah.
need to move first to amend by substitution the ordinance.
Thank you. I move that we amend by substitution.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Kay, would you please call the roll?
Robinette?
Yes.
Roland?
Yes.
Zanfordino?
Yes.
Osbacher?
Yes.
Harold?
Yes.
Hollenbaugh?
Yes.
Jeffers?
Yes.
The motion passes. Ordinance 8704 is amended by substitution.
So we're already at the third reading then.
Yes, so you're ready to adopt it as amended.
Okay. So I move to adopt ordinance 8704 as amended.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
I will support passage of this, but I want to make it very clear. I think it's very important that as a city council, we realize that parking is far from what we would desire in the city of Bowling Green, and that we continue searching for answers and revisit this at appropriate times in the future.
Mr. President, I would echo what Sandy said.
And I just want to say, I hope people will give kiosks a chance, and people that have I'm not trying to be funny as usual, sorry. But that people really give them a chance, give it a second try if that's what it takes. Ask somebody to help you with kiosks. They're a good thing, and it's going to be a good setup. And Sandy brings good points, and it's not a perfect system. And our businesses are always just fighting tooth and nail to make things work. They're just some of the hardest working people. Very impressed with our downtown property owners. They were not standing in the way of anything. They were very glad to work with whatever the committee as a group decided. So I think this is the right way to go.
Thanks, Bruce. Kay, please call the roll.
Roland?
Yes.
Zanfordino?
Yes.
Osbacher?
Yes.
Harold?
Yes.
Hollenbaugh?
Yes.
Jeffers?
Yes.
Robinette?
Yes.
The motion passes. Ordinance 874 is adopted.
Mr. Jeffers, could you pass it down to me, please? Thank you.
Councilman John Lennon.
That completes the items on our agenda this evening. Is there any other business to come before council? Seeing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Didn't equate the two.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.